Stress. It's bigger than you think, and it's worse than you think. And it's way more interesting than you think. Today, we're speaking with Frank Forencich. He's a stress expert, and he's also nicknamed Dr. Animal. And you're going to find out why. So let's dive right in. Frank, stress, is it a real thing? Is it happening everywhere? What's the story with the human animal and stress?
It's a very real thing. And it's such an interesting thing because it tells us so much about our relationship with the world and how we're living and how we might change course. And in that sense, stress is definitely an annoyance and a danger and a problem, but it's also a teacher. And that's what I love about that. For me, stress is one of the most exciting subjects that are out there.
So stress in the human animal. So I'm getting the implication that stress impacts our physiology, our animal nature, maybe our psychology, the way we interact. Give us a little broad brush on stress and the impact on the human animal.
Right. Well, a lot of this has filtered its way into popular knowledge. And most people know something about the autonomic nervous system. This is an ancient system in the body, and it's mostly subcortical, which is to say it's below the level of conscious control. And when there's a perceived threat to the organism, and it's not just humans, but it's mammals, it's primates, it goes way back in evolutionary history, that when there's a perceived threat to the organism, we fire one branch of that autonomic system, which moves us into what everybody knows now, fight, flight responses, the emergency mobilization of the body, which is great if you're living in a truly dangerous environment. But if you fire that system continuously over months and years and decades, then it's going to degrade your tissue, your physiology, and your performance. So that's the main challenge around stress.
Wow. Wow. So are we living in I always remember Mutual of Omaha and the nature shows where like the gazelles are out there eating grass and suddenly, boom, here comes the cheetah or the lion. And they have this radical spike in stress for about 30 seconds. And then Dave, who was the slow one, becomes lunch, right? And then within minutes, the rest of the gazelles their little tails are wagging and they're back to normal. It's like, but it seems like we humans are under ever more constant stress. What is that real and what's it doing to us?
Well, it's both real and imaginary, I suppose, because it's as if we are in a hunting and gathering camp setting, and instead of one pride of lions that comes by every now and then, it feels like we are just surrounded by lions and leopards and hyenas and every kind of dangerous animal. So we're firing that stress response continuously. And we need, in a normal hunting and gathering environment, we were pretty good at resting and relaxing. We would go back to camp. We would have a challenging experience. We'd go back to camp, rest and relax for a day or two or three or whatever it was, and then we'd re-engage with the world. But we're not very good at that anymore, and so we need help. We need help from people or ideas that can help us take the time in safe spaces to calm down and activate the other side of the autonomic system.
Right, right. So we need to switch from alarm bells and red flashing lights over into, you said rest, relax, and recover. Is that it?
Right, rest and digest, which is how most people think of it. In massage school, we called it the feed and breathe response, which is sort of code for when you're feeling really relaxed, you want to have a nice meal and you want to have sex. That's the feed and breathe response. So we need more feed and breathe and less of the fight flight response.
Frank, I think most people would agree with you on that. Parenthetically, in our society, it seems like, so if I'm catching the vibe here, it seems like we've kind of got ourselves like that little hamster on the wheel. We're just running on the wheel over and over again with the stress. And then we're finding things to try and relieve the stress, like watching stressful TV shows and, all those kinds of things, right?
Right. And the funny thing about the hamster wheel is part of it is real and part of it is our own creation. So we our imaginations are so pivotal in all of this. We construct lions and tigers and hamster wheels because this is how we see the world now.
Right.
And some of this is subjective and some of it is objective. And that's, I think, a really crucial distinction, because there are people and times in our lives when stress is absolutely objective. And I don't think it makes much sense to try and reinterpret that. But a lot of times our stress is simply subjective. And if we put a different frame around it, then we can manage it much more effectively.
Wow. Okay. So if I'm understanding you, it seems like okay, if there were like, we were in a war battle situation with swords and shields and all that, that's highly stressful. If we're fighting off a lion, or if some wolves are attacking our herd of sheep in the mountains in the old days, that's a natural stress response. Or if there's a massive, whatever, a forest fire or a snowstorm or blizzard that's putting our family at risk, those are stressful environments for the old days. But today it seems like, when do people actually get to relax? I mean, what's the ratio, first of all? What's the ratio between how much time we should be stressed and how much time relaxed? For the antelope, it's like 5% stressed, 95% relaxed. What's good for humans?
Well, I would imagine it's the same number or thereabouts, right? And the Paleolithic rhythm that we lived in was probably like what you described for the gazelle, is the occasional 5% of living under stressful conditions and the rest in parasympathetic feed and breed mode. And that's what we might aim for. But I think for a lot of people now, it's the reverse. And
Right.
we're 95% stressed and maybe 5% of time in feed and breed.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. So the other thing that I understand is that, and again, tell me if I'm correct, but it seems like a lot of our lifestyles are trying to get rid of stress, but those things in themselves cause stress, or we're trying to recover from too much stress and haven't fully recovered. So we have to add caffeine and other things that further stress the body's systems out.
Right. And we're such an achievement oriented culture that we even take our own wellness practices and turn them into achievement items on our to-do list, right? You have to do your relaxation and your meditation and your exercise and all your wellness activities. You have to do them in a particular way now. And it has to be based on expert scientific knowledge, and you have to do it just so. And it all has to be tracked with a technological device. But that I think is really missing the point, because we have this capability wired into us, and all we need to do is give it the time and the opportunity to express itself. And so my big recommendations on this are twofold. And we've heard this all before. I mean, this is part of the standard template or the recipe that we have: movement snacks and meditation. And we all know that exercise is important for this, and we all know that meditation is good. So we could talk more about that, but I think that's the two-pronged approach to all of this.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, let's talk about that, of the two pronged approach, because um, one of the things, I mean, I meditate. I love it. I find it super relaxing. I'll often meditate before a podcast or before I have to do some creative writing, or just at the end of the day to just kind of let the day fall away, right? And I find it very helpful. However, I've got some friends they're very evangelical Christians, and they feel that meditation is a form of, evil or Buddhist Satanism or something. I'm not sure what they all think. Some folks down in California are very pro meditation, but I've got some friends in California who say, I don't want my kids anywhere near it. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us, what's the physiology of meditation, and is it a satanic thing, or is it a religious thing, or is it just a way that humans can connect to themselves?
No, it's 100% normal for the human animal to do this. And there's nothing satanic or diabolical about it. And I think that the mistake that people make is they feel that meditation is a way to access some paranormal state,
Hmm.
some special kind of consciousness. And I don't see it that way at all. I see it as a way to access a normal state of consciousness. We have the abnormal state now walking around in the modern world, and meditation is simply a way to get back to our normal condition. So anybody can do it. It requires really no expertise at all. I can tell you about the various prompts that I use, but it's 100% natural and normal.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this, because I had a hunch the other day and I was wondering about this. Um, is contemplative prayer and people saying repetitive prayer and doing the rosary, is that also a form of meditation in a sense?
Yeah, I think so. And the it's focused, it's quiet, there's concentration, and maybe you are concentrating on one thing or another. I don't think the object of your attention makes that much difference. Most people talk about paying attention to the breath, which of course that's a great thing, but you could pay attention to a flower or a rosary, anything.
Yeah.
And as long as you sustain that attention during your meditation practice, then you're doing it right.
Wow, that's great. That's great. That's a great way for people who they can pick whichever way they want. So they want to do a regular kind of a meditation, they want to do a contemplative prayer, the rosary, and all that, or something similar to that. Any blend of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's taking the time, I think, is the key ingredient. And that's the big stumbling block for most people. They say, I don't have time to be in meditation. And
Right.
my rejoinder to that is, well, do you have time to feel really frantic and anxious and overwhelmed with the world? Oh, yeah, I have plenty of time for that.
Wow, absolutely. Oh, here's the other thing. The second half of this piece is, you have the meditation and contemplative prayer on one side, and you said then exercise snacks. I want to jump back for a second because you are actually, Dr. Animal in a sense. You are the paleo kind of guy. You understand paleo humans, meaning early tribal human hunter-gatherer stuff. You understand that very well. Did they just sit around all day and watch TV and work behind a desk, or how much were they using their bodies every day compared to the way we do?
Yeah, you hear all kinds of figures, but some people have suggested, anthropologists have looked at this, and they say a typical hunter gatherer tribe, people will walk several miles, up to 10 miles a day on average. And there would be some running involved, but there would also be some quiet time involved, and there would be some plenty of social time and gossip involved. So that the physical demands would have been pretty consistent from
Hmm.
day lots of walking, maybe various kinds of terrain going up and down over rocky terrain, sandy terrain, muddy terrain, all of these things, and most of it barefoot or nearly barefoot most of the time. And that has been our life. That is historically normal for the human animal. That's the way we've lived for 99% of our time on Earth.
Wow. So, in other words, the evolution has built this machine, if you will, this system called a human body, and it was designed for certain physiological behaviors, right? The capacity to do off-road, that's making a
Right.
joke, but to be off-road, to climb, to hunt, to gather, to walk, to run, to dig, to go through all kinds of terrain, and but basically on a constant basis, using the body all day long for something, right? And now it seems like we're not doing that. What you said exercise snacks. Is that a sort of a secret way to kind of mimic a little biomimicry of our own prior paleo past?
Oh, that's a great way to put it. It's taking movement, integrating it into your normal life, and distributing it throughout the day. That's the key. And there's been some big studies on this, and they say that you can get huge benefits by these micro um, movement experiences that are spread out. Now, I think the exercise community, the fitness community, has got some of this wrong because we have this stereotype now that we believe that exercise has to be highly concentrated in a gym, and there's got to be a warm up and then the sustained sweaty period that lasts roughly an hour and then a cool down and so on. And people say, well, I don't have time to go to the gym and that's too much for me and so on. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can do these movement snacks, and it's not going to turn you into an Olympic athlete. But if you do these micro exercise segments throughout the day, it makes a huge difference. The way I put it to people, I say a little turns out to be a lot. And
Right.
It works for me. That's what I do. I take the stairs all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. What it reminds me of is the whole idea of investing. If you start at the age of 16 and you put like, $25 a week away for your whole life, you're a millionaire by the time you're 50 or something. Right. So it's
Right.
like, but that like little micro investing financially is the same as micro investing physically with these snacks, whether it's going up and down the stairs 10 times as a coffee break, to grab a cup of coffee, or whether it's maybe, walking once around the block or doing 20 or 30 squats or push-ups, just those things. I think over time, you're saying they add up just like investing in a bank account.
Absolutely. And another way to think of this, I've heard athletic coaches talk this way, is that you need to create for yourself high contrast living. So, in other words, when you are moving, you do it with authority, you do it with concentration, you really try and push yourself. And then when you're relaxing, you relax as completely as possible. So, it's the contrast that makes for the body. Instead, what we do in the modern world is we have this low contrast living where we're always kind of partially engaged with our lives and we're kind of trying and not really resting, and it's all one big thing of 10,000 days of experience rather than one solid day of high contrast. That's what works for athletes. That's what works for us too.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is great. So I guess right now, what a lot of people are feeling is an overwhelming amount of background stress in
Mhm.
ways that our grandparents, I think you and I are about the same age. I might be a little older than you, but it's like our grandparents back at the turn of the last century before, right? They had a very low level of stress. They used their bodies a lot. They physically worked around the house. They literally they cooked and cleaned by hand, all those kinds of things, chopped wood, whatever. And so they did a lot of physical things their whole life. And now here we are in this techno whatever society, information society, where we're not only getting less physical exercise and pushback in the real world. We've got our bodies in temperature controlled rooms for the most part, and we've got stuff on our feet to cover our feet when we go outside. So they're not getting all those muscles aren't getting actual use; they're just getting sort of a blanket use. A lot of these things where the body has become weaker from lack of use, but also we've got an increased amount of stress at the same time, both real and imagined. And
Right.
so it seems like we're painting ourselves into the proverbial corner with two paintbrushes. One is increased stress, the other is lack of using our body, which of course reduces stress. So what do you think if we were to just imagine for the average person, and it's going to be different for a 20-year-old than someone who's in their 60s, right? What are some things we can do, we can begin to think about and begin to do that are easy to, as they say, bootstrap or, bring into your life easily? What do you recommend? What's some ideas?
Well, one of the first things you speak about the modern world and the overwhelming demands on cognition. And that is, some people call that cognitive overload.
Hmm.
And it's incredibly stressful. There's more information now to the average person on the internet than there was throughout human history. I mean, if you look at our ancestors, they had to deal with a very small amount of this cognitive information that we have now. And now it's an avalanche, a tsunami coming at us. So, one of the first things is to learn how to manage that and to only deal with that to the extent that you really need to. Because there's just no end to it. I mean, the fire hose coming into our homes and our offices and our phones now is just relentless. So you
Right.
have to find a way to triage there. And it's going to be different for everybody, but there has to be limits on your cognitive consumption. And this means turning the stuff off from time to time. So
Yeah.
that would be the first step. And then again, the meditation, the movement snacks, and what some people call the tend and befriend response. And
Okay.
yeah, some female anthropologists have pushed back and they've said, well, it's more than the fight flight response because women tend to tend and befriend one another in times of stress. And of course, men can do this too. So it's simply getting together with people that you trust and people that you like and spending time with them. I mean, that's fundamental to reducing the stress response.
Wow. So that's when you talked about the paleo tribal stuff, they would go out and they would hunt and come back and do this thing, gather, what have you. But you said there was also a lot of socializing time. And it
Oh,
seems like part of the epidemic we're having right now is we relieve stress by talking with each other and problem solving with each other. And the average man in the past, I think 30 years, 35 years, has gone from 4 or 5 major friends, male friends they can sit and talk to and express their feelings and so forth, to less than one on average.
right,
And
right.
and it may be similar for women, but especially as women have gone into the workplace more and more and have become the dominant force in the workplace now. So how do we make up for that? Do we need to say, okay, we're going to do coffee clatches every Saturday, or what do we do?
Perhaps any form of gathering is better than none. I think the phones are really problematic. We substitute messaging for actual face-to-face contact with one another, and that's really been destructive, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, the key in all of this, people who have written about loneliness, they say it's not the proximity of other people. It's being in contact with people who share your values and your curiosities about the world. And sure, you can surround yourself with just a bunch of humans, and that's maybe better than nothing. But the important thing is to seek out people that share your same worldview and relate to the world in similar ways. And then you can have a connection. Then you can have a relationship, and that's what's comforting.
Yeah. I dig that. I love that. Okay. So uh, meditation, prayer, like contemplative quieting down on the inside, and everything else, taking time out, letting the world slip away and fall away. That's excellent. The exercise snacks,
Right,
right? So and walking, all using the body more, right? Like you said, take the stairs, right? My doctor, my cardiologist always says, take the stairs, which I do. So that's good one. And then getting together with people and sharing conversation and values and ideas and being connected to other people, right?
right, right.
Those are great. Yeah.
And then I would add one other thing, and that's contact with nature. And this, of course, is a huge deficit for most people because now we have, I don't know, the majority of people on the planet living in urban environments. And it takes a lot of work to get out of an urban center into a place that is even remotely natural now.
Right. Right.
So, but you got to make the effort. I mean, it's such a fundamental part of our bodies and our well-being to have that contact with nature. There's a lot of really interesting research now coming out about the experience of awe. And
Mm,
we had discounted that for a long time. We thought, well, every now and then you have an experience of awe, you see the Milky Way or whatever it is. But now we know from the research is it has powerful effects on the body and on the health. So you got to do it. You got to find ways to make yourself small in comparison to nature. And that takes effort. Got to do it.
wow. I love that. Frank, you're blowing my mind here. I wasn't expecting that one. That's a great one. I've
Yeah.
had experiences of all like that, like in the Gila wilderness on top of a mesa, almost totally alone, seeing out like a 40-mile view and seeing the single thunderhead just rolling along with lightning and everything, and the rain going down and being reabsorbed before it hit the ground. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. It was like a giant jellyfish going across the sky. It was the most incredible thing. And the sunset behind it, it was almost magic.
Yeah. Well, you've been up on Half Dome in Yosemite,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And that kind of thing is so powerful and so rare in the modern world. If you
Yeah.
think about paleo and living on the grassland, living in East Africa, on the Serengeti, or maybe South Africa, you would have had these awe experiences almost every day. I mean,
Right.
thunderstorms, the night sky, the animal dramas going on, awe would have been there all the time for you. And now it's almost completely disappeared, especially for young people. If you're on your phone all the time, there's no awe there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I was going to mention one more was going into Notre Dame before it burned, going into Notre Dame Cathedral early morning with the sunlight coming through the stained glass and the incense. And there was this like these monks were chanting and doing this thing. It was like this unbelievable experience, spiritual experience, just with like awe. And it was just incredible, just at the size of it inside and the beauty. You can imagine someone 300 years ago who had been in a town with only a 2-story building walking in, it's like 12 stories inside, you
Yeah.
know, and the stained glass, the incense, that would have created awe as well. And maybe that's the benefit of some of these large concerts where you're there with, 30,000 people and there's this vibe and this energy and the band comes on or whoever you're watching comes on and there's this feeling that happens, right?
Yeah. It's powerful stuff, and we need to seek it out.
We need to seek it out. Yeah. Frank, this has been wonderful. We're going to have you back on again because I know you're the author of I think what 12 books is it?
A
So
few. I've done a few. Yeah.
you got a few. I think we've only touched on one of them, so we may need to have you become a regular here.
Okay.
But let's do this before you go. One of the questions I love to ask because you as a human being have accumulated a large amount of wisdom, insight, knowledge, and experience, and you have this beautiful perspective. If you had 30 seconds to talk to the whole world, like the Mr. Magic microphone, and you could be in everybody's ear suddenly, not necessarily the voice of God, but the voice of Frank, what
Mhm.
what message would you give the entire planet right now if you could?
Right. Well, I would piggyback on a spiritual teacher that I've followed a little bit. He actually was a climber for most of his life in Yosemite Valley. And you can imagine, speaking of awe, that's something that was part of his life almost every day.
Right.
And so he became a spiritual teacher, and he had this unique perspective on humans because all these tourists would come into the valley all the time, and he could see how they would behave in comparison to his life. And his conclusion was simply that people need to calm down. People need to stop being so afraid. And that really resonated for me because it's the fear that trips us up. It's the fear that causes so much of our suffering. And if we could just calm down a little bit, not be so afraid, our lives would work so much better. And that's how I would leave it.
Boom. Wow. Frank, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Frank Forencich. He's a Dr. Animal. He's a master of stress and stress relief. He's studied the human animal and the paleo animal. We're going to put all his links down below. Check him out. I think I've got most of your books, Frank. Incredible author. Highly recommend you grab his books if you feel moved to do so. And we're going to have you back on. Thanks for coming out today, Frank.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure.